I watched her face closely when I told her I had no money left. There was no panic, no tears, only a strange calmness that didn't belong. She asked questions about bills, the house, and whether we could survive without my income. I thought she would be worried, maybe hug me, or at least show some fear. But she didn't. Her eyes seemed distant, almost cold. That night, she went to talk with her sister, Brinley. I stayed quiet in the next room listening. The words I heard made my heart sink. She wasn't worried about me or us. She was planning. If he's really broke, I need to make sure I'm safe, she said. Brinley laughed softly, giving advice on how to protect herself. My chest tightened. I couldn't believe the woman I trusted the most was thinking about leaving me before I even hit rock bottom. The days after were strange. She acted normal around me, cooked meals, smiled sometimes, but there was always a hidden tension. I could feel her calculating, measuring how much control she had. Even when I tried to bring up plans to fix things, she changed the topic, talking about selling our things, moving out, or saving for herself. Everything I thought was love felt like a lie now. I realized the person I married wasn't the one sitting across from me. She had only been with me for comfort, stability, and what I could provide. And now, when I was supposedly broken, the real truth came out. She wasn't loyal. She didn't care about us. She cared about herself, her future, and how to protect it. And in that moment, the trust one had in her shattered completely. I stayed silent, watching her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just understood. This was betrayal in its purest form. When I told Maricela we had no money left, her reaction was nothing like I expected. She didn't gasp, cry, or even ask how it happened. She just froze, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. That night, she barely spoke. When she did, her words felt cold and careful. She asked about insurance, the house, and whether our names were correctly on everything. I told myself she was just trying to plan, that maybe she was scared. But there was no fear in her eyes, only calculation, like she was measuring every option for herself. I watched her move through the house, checking files, glancing at papers, and making small notes. Every gesture seemed intentional, precise. I realized then that she wasn't worried about us surviving. She was worried about herself. She kept asking questions about what she could take, what she could protect if things got worse. Even when I tried to reassure her, she nodded politely, but her mind seemed somewhere else entirely. That distance cut deeper than anger ever could. I thought I knew her, trusted her completely. But this behavior, this careful planning instead of concern, felt like a crack in everything we had. It wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was quiet, creeping in, changing the way I saw her. The love I believed in suddenly seemed fragile, like it had been built on comfort and convenience rather than loyalty. By the end of the night, I understood something I hadn't faced before. The person I married wasn't the woman sitting across from me. She was someone who saw my struggle as a test of her opportunity, not a moment for support. And in that cold, distant gaze, I felt the first real crack in our marriage. It was small, silent, but it would grow, and I could already see where it was heading. 2 days after I told Maricela we were broke, her sister Brinley came over. I stayed upstairs, pretending to nap, but I could hear everything. Maricela's voice was soft, almost casual, but what she said made my blood run cold. "I'm not staying with a man who can't provide," she whispered. "I gave him 5 years. If he's broke, I'm done." I froze. I wanted to storm downstairs, to shout, to ask if she meant it, but something inside me held back. I listened as Brinley replied calmly, "Make sure you secure the house first." That was it. No sympathy, no concern about me or our marriage, just a plan to protect herself. My chest felt hollow, as if someone had punched a hole right through it. I sat there quietly, trying to process what I had just heard. The woman I had trusted completely, the woman I had shared my life with, was already planning to leave me the moment she thought I had nothing left. Her words weren't loud, but they were sharp, cutting through every memory I had of her love and care. That night, when she came upstairs, she smiled at me like nothing had happened. She talked about dinner, asked me how I was feeling, and acted as if we were fine. But I knew the truth. She wasn't fine. She was planning, calculating. already thinking about how to make the most of my supposed downfall. I realized then that this wasn't just a crack in our marriage, it was a chasm. The person I married wasn't standing in front of me anymore. She was someone I didn't recognize, someone who saw my struggle as an opportunity, not a moment to stand together. And in that moment, everything I believed about us started to crumble quietly, but completely. After that night with Brinley, Maricela changed completely. She grew distant, like a stranger living under the same roof. She stopped cooking meals, stopped asking how I was, stopped sharing any small moments we used to have. Even her smiles felt forced, empty, like part of a carefully planned act. She started talking about divorce casually, as if it were no more serious than the weather outside. Sometimes she would sit across from me at the table and mention selling my failing business before it got worse, or moving our things somewhere safe. She spoke with a calm, almost cheerful tone, as if she were giving advice rather than discussing the future of our marriage. I watched her closely, keeping up my own performance. I acted defeated, hopeless, completely crushed by my imaginary bankruptcy. I wanted to see how far she would go, to understand what she was really thinking. Every word she said, every small suggestion she made, showed me pieces of her plan, and each one cut deeper than the last. It was like living in a house with glass walls. Everything was visible, but no one would admit it. Maricela wasn't hiding her intentions anymore. She was performing for me, acting like she still cared while plotting her own way out. And I kept pretending. I let her see me weak, broken, defeated. I listened to her plans, her suggestions, her little smiles and careful words, all while inside I was calculating my own next steps. I realized then that this wasn't just betrayal, it was a test. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. And the truth was more painful than any argument, any fight, or any loss I could imagine. One afternoon, I couldn't ignore the suspicion any longer. I followed Maricela as she left the house. She drove downtown and went into a small office building. I stayed across the street, hiding behind a parked car, and watched as she walked in. A few minutes later, a man in a suit came out, and they shook hands firmly. That was enough to confirm what I had feared. When she got home that evening, she smiled at me and said she had been running errands. She acted cheerful, even sweet, like nothing had happened. I kept my expression neutral, listening to her talk about picking up groceries and tidying the house, while inside I was reeling. She had lied, planned, and taken steps to protect herself, all while keeping up the act of being loving and supportive. It hit me then. Everything she had done since I told her about the bankruptcy had been a performance. Every suggestion about selling the house, every casual comment about divorce, every distant glance. It wasn't confusion or panic. It was strategy. She wasn't worried about me, about us, or about the marriage. She was worrying only about how to secure her own future. That night, I stayed up late, thinking about all the small moments I had ignored, all the subtle signs I had brushed off as stress or fear. Now they made sense. She had been plotting, quietly and carefully, planning each step while I played the role of the broken husband she thought I had become. For the first time, I understood clearly. Maricela's affection wasn't love. It was calculated. And everything I had believed about us, about her loyalty, was a lie wrapped in smiles and words. That realization burned more than anger ever could. What Maricela didn't know was that everything I had told her about being broke was a lie. The business hadn't failed. In fact, it had just signed its biggest contract yet, one that would secure our future comfortably for years. I had staged the collapse carefully, watching how she would react, hoping to see if her loyalty matched the promises she had made when we married. Instead of love or support, I discovered her exit plan. Every step she had taken, every suggestion about selling the house or preparing for divorce, wasn't panic or worry. It was strategy. She had no intention of standing by me in hard times. She had already been planning how to take what she could, how to protect herself, all while I played the part of a man who had lost everything. I kept pretending to be desperate, broken, and defeated. I let her believe she was in control, letting her think my failure was real. She walked around confidently, thinking she had the upper hand, carefully planning every move with Brinley's advice echoing in her ears. And all the while I knew the truth. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't broken. I had all the control she thought she had. That realization gave me a strange sense of calm. The betrayal still stung, but now it was sharpened by knowledge and clarity. I had seen the person she really was, the one hiding behind her smiles, her careful words, her support. And knowing that she had underestimated me, that she thought she could manipulate the situation completely, gave me an edge. I decided then to step back and let her continue her plans. I would watch, wait, and let the truth unfold in a way she never expected. She thought she was winning, but the real game had just begun, and I held all the cards. After realizing Maricella's true intentions, I knew I couldn't act impulsively. I quietly scheduled a meeting with my attorney and went over every detail of my finances. The house was fully in my name, bought before our marriage. The business, the accounts, every contract, every asset, it was all mine. I double-checked everything to make sure nothing could be challenged or taken without my knowledge. I moved funds into protected accounts, updated legal documents, and made thorough records of everything. Every step was careful, deliberate. I didn't confront her, didn't yell, didn't threaten. I stayed calm, silent, letting her believe she still had the upper hand. Every move she made, every casual comment about selling things or planning the divorce, I recorded in my mind. The more I prepared, the clearer I became. I could see how easily she had underestimated me. She thought my bankruptcy made me weak, desperate, and unprotected. In reality, I was building a safety net that would leave her with nothing if she tried to take advantage. Every night, I reviewed plans and documents, making sure every detail was airtight. I didn't want a confrontation yet. This was about patience, strategy, and control. I let her continue acting as if she was in charge, making her mistakes, showing her hand. And as I prepared, I realized something else. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about dignity, about exposing the betrayal, about proving that loyalty cannot be forced or faked. While she plotted, I was quietly planning a future where I controlled the outcome. Every smile she gave me, every casual word about divorce, became fuel for my own preparation. By the time she thought she had everything mapped out, I would already be steps ahead, and she wouldn't even see it coming. Eventually, Maricela made her move. She filed for divorce, claiming that my reckless business decisions had put us in financial ruin and caused her emotional stress. In her filings, she painted herself as the victim, a woman forced to protect herself from a husband who had failed to provide. She didn't mention that I had created the bankruptcy story as a test, or that the business was thriving. To her advantage, she framed the entire situation as if I had caused our downfall. I played my part perfectly. I acted defeated in the court documents, letting her think she had the upper hand. I didn't fight back immediately, didn't contradict her claims. I wanted her to believe she had won, that her planning and manipulation had worked. Every word she submitted, every accusation, I studied quietly, noting the gaps, the lies, the inconsistencies. The court hearings were formal and tense. She presented her case confidently, expecting the judge to see her as the wronged party. I stayed silent, acting weary and powerless, just as she expected. Inside, however, I felt no fear, no panic. I knew my position, my assets, and the truth of the business. I knew what she didn't. How carefully I had prepared, how much control I really had, and how far ahead I already was. As she spoke about financial instability and stress, I kept my calm, my expression neutral. Every claim she made, every detail she thought would sway the court, only strengthened my resolve. I let her believe she had the advantage, confident that the outcome would prove otherwise. At that moment, I realized the depth of her misjudgment. While she thought she had trapped me, I had been quietly watching, learning, and preparing. Her move had been bold, but it had played perfectly into my hands. At mediation, the moment of truth arrived. My lawyer stood and handed over the updated financial statements. The room went silent as he explained everything. The business wasn't bankrupt, it was thriving. Every contract was in place, projections were strong, and the books were completely clean. Maricela's confident smile vanished instantly. I watched her face drain of color, her eyes widening as she realized what had just been revealed. Her lawyer looked equally stunned, flipping through papers, muttering under his breath. The judge leaned forward, curious, and asked why she had claimed insolvency in her filings. The room felt heavy with tension, every eye on her as the truth became undeniable. Maricela tried to speak, to defend herself, but the words stumbled out weakly. Her story about financial instability collapsed under the weight of the clear evidence. Every plan she had carefully laid out, every move she had made assuming I was broke, fell apart in front of her own eyes. The calm, calculating woman who had plotted her way through our marriage looked exposed and powerless. I stayed quiet, letting the documents speak for themselves. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't make a scene. I simply watched as her carefully constructed plan crumbled. The mediator and judge saw the truth, the evidence of her strategy, and the reality of her misjudgment. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. Relief that the betrayal had been exposed, and satisfaction that my patience and preparation had worked. Maricela had assumed I was weak, desperate, and defeated, but the reveal proved the opposite. The truth was undeniable, and now she had no way to hide the person she really was, or the miscalculation she had made in underestimating me. Maricela's plan completely backfired. The court carefully reviewed her filings, the timing of her actions, and the evidence my lawyer had presented. Every attempt she made to claim assets or portray herself as the victim was exposed as calculated and strategic. Because I had entered the marriage owning the house, the business, and most major assets, the court saw clearly that her claims were exaggerated and misleading. Every document, every transaction I had carefully prepared, proved that she had no legal right to take more than what was fair. Her strategy to manipulate the division of property had failed completely. Even her lawyer struggled to recover, realizing that the carefully laid plan they had hoped would work was falling apart. Maricela had assumed I was weak, unprepared, and desperate, but in reality, I had anticipated every move. The court didn't just see her lies. They saw the truth of her intentions, the way she had plotted, and the steps she had taken to protect herself at my expense. When the final settlement was announced, it was far less than she had expected. She walked out with only a fraction of what she had planned to claim, and the look on her face showed a mix of shock and disbelief. Every smile, every calculated suggestion, every act of manipulation she had made in the past weeks had crumbled before her. I stayed calm, silent, and composed. I didn't gloat or rub it in. The court had done that for me. The betrayal she thought would secure her future had instead revealed her true nature and her misjudgment. Her consequences were clear. She had tried to play a game of strategy and manipulation, but in the end, she lost far more than I ever could have imagined, and I had regained far more than just my assets. When it was all over, Maricela walked away believing she had won. She thought she was leaving a man broken by business failure, a man who had nothing left to offer, but the truth was the opposite. She left the only man who had truly loved her, someone who had been patient, loyal, and willing to protect their marriage even when she had already given up. I kept everything that mattered. My business, which was thriving more than ever, my home, and most importantly my dignity. None of it was taken from me because I had prepared, stayed calm, and never let her see the real strength I held beneath the surface. Every step she had taken to manipulate and control the situation only confirmed who she really was, and who I was capable of being. The lesson I learned went far beyond money or possessions. It was about loyalty and character. Some people will stay when times are hard. Others will leave, not because you fail, but because they think you have. Maricela left when she believed I was powerless, and that revealed everything. I didn't celebrate her loss or gloat over the settlement. I simply moved forward. I rebuilt what she had tried to destroy. Not with anger or revenge, but with patience, clarity, and focus. I strengthened the business, secured my assets, and reclaimed the peace that had been threatened by her betrayal. In the end, I understood something fundamental. True loyalty is rare, and it shows itself when it's most tested. I had tested mine, and I had learned hers. She had chosen the path of self-interest and deceit, and I had chosen the path of preparation, patience, and ultimately freedom. The loss was hers. The future, entirely mine.
Some stories don't end, they follow you. If this one stayed in your mind, you know what to do.